Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Really excited to be able to be putting this panel on today. For those of you who don't know, this is part of VisionFest. It's an organization called Filmmakers Alliance. It's their yearly event, and they have a screening and an award presentation. This year they're giving an award to Neon. And Ted Hope was once the recipient of said Vision Award. Yeah. And so it's put on by Filmmakers Alliance, and then also some of the partners we want to thank, Black Magic, First Entertainment Credit Union, and the League of Filmmakers. So they decided this year they wanted to make it, offer a little more for filmmakers, so they added some panels beforehand. And I'm very, very excited to be doing this one. It's Reimagining Cinema, the NonDe movement, audience power. So we're going to be talking about what the NonDe movement is, and a lot of you are familiar with it. There's a lot of film stackers in here. That's the film section of Substack. We started calling it Film Stack. So those of you that aren't familiar with that, you'll be learning all about it. And I'm very excited to have on our panel here today. I'll just introduce everyone real quick. We have Ted Hope. Many of you may know him. He's a producer of 70 amazing independent films. He was a studio executive on Over 60. He launched Amazon's foray into feature film production, leading them to 19 Oscar nominations and 5 wins. Ted's Substack and memoir, Hope for Film, are must-reads, and he actually coined the term NonDe, and he most recently launched the Filmstack Daily Digest, which brings together all of the Filmstack writers in a very organized, great fashion. So we're so happy to have you here. And then next to him, we have John Saul. John is a TV writer who worked in the writer's room of Veep and wrote for Fox animated sitcom Housebroken. He's now producing his own digital comedy series and sharing entertainment industry insights on his Substack newsletter, How Not to Be a TV Writer. So thank you, John. Next to John, we have Ellis Sutton. Ellis is a filmmaker and young industry professional, having made short films and worked in creative development at Warner Brothers, Netflix, and Heartbeat. His Substack, Notes from the Studio, focuses on his industry insights and what those inside and outside the industry should be thinking about for the future of cinema. He also co-founded the label with Taylor Lewis, a newsletter dedicated to building up knowledge on marketing and branding for emerging filmmakers. And then next to Ellis, we have Taylor Lewis. Taylor is a filmmaker, artist, and entrepreneur focused on the future of cinema, both as an art form and an ecosystem. She's currently creating her first slate of films, and she runs 2 Substack publications exploring cinema's marketing problem, the need for direct filmmaker-audience relationships, and the rise of a new cinematic movement. She's also developing alternative exhibition and distribution models while building community among filmmakers and cinephiles online and in real spaces. She's really doing a lot, Taylor, and she's, as Ted Hope calls her, the gasoline and the fire of Filmstack here, so this movement. So glad to have her. We have Courtney Daniels. She's a great example of someone who really does great micro budget features. She's made 3 features, and she's written a book called Yes You Can: How to Make a Movie for Almost No Money. So we're so glad to have Courtney here with us as well. Who don't know what NonDe is, I think we'll just start with that. And I'd like to. I'm nervous. So I just want to get everyone's opinion on what NonDe is to them and what got them into this movement. And of course, we're going to start with Ted Hope because he coined the term, and he's the mayor of Filmstack, and he's the one that really started all this. So I'll start with him.
So pass the mic.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys. You're here for 6-7 hours, right? Because I won't take more than 45 minutes. Now you're here, but I'll try to give you joy. That is short to me. So I've been working in what has, previously been called independent film for about 40 years now, and I would say a good long 10 years ago, it started to feel like an antiquated term to me for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is the one that always plagued it, that it wasn't independent. It was dependent on a whole ecosystem that was driven by studio work or global cinema. Once the streaming world kind of became the dominant structure of it, it became really clear to me that it didn't make any sense. Not the least of which that many people who practiced it didn't want to call themselves independent filmmakers anymore. You had different influences coming in, the creator economy and all of that, and different modes of working, but it wasn't unified. We needed a different name. And when I got pushed on the Substack by Elon Musk, I very quickly started to write about the need for a separate ecosystem. But it's hard to keep writing out. You need a ecosystem for cinema that's not dependent on the studios and all of that along the way. And it became clear as the community was starting to develop that there were a lot more principles, essentially, that many people stood for or wanted to find ways to make work. That something that wasn't just transactional, something that wasn't just for you and yourself and your own success, something that could help build something better along the way. And I came up. I was on my car right here. I was trying to figure out like what really drove me into where I am, not just a man and his husband, but and a big part of it was punk rock, the feeling that I belonged to something that, didn't have a leader, that was community oriented. And from punk rock, I went into community organizing, politics, same sort of thing. Like, if you want people to show up, you better have a pizza and a vision, to try to keep them there. And essentially those two things, and then the good fortune of arriving in New York City, literally the year that She's Got Habits, Stranger Than Paradise, Blood Simple, the year before was Smithereens. All these movies came out, and you could see a new model emerging. How do you know where you want to go unless someone points you in a certain direction? And it became clear to me, like, we all needed to get pointed in a better direction. And that the answer of what this journey we're on, the destination we were headed, wasn't something one person would have, but really a community that would start to define it. And so to me, I guess that's the short answer, a holistic approach to cinema that was encompassing the values of a community where shared work and it was ultimately the defining things. I did one more other thing. I'll keep rambling on. But just one. I'm only going to add one more. And if I had to complain about what independent film was and why I no longer felt like I wanted to use that way to describe the way I had been described it 40 years, was I couldn't really say what independent stood for today, right? That independent grew by having a specific voice. Independent film was the voice that was not corporate, that was defined by the individual artist. But beyond that, I didn't really feel like it had determined principles that it stood for. And the key thing that in this era felt to me that we were missing was sustainability. How can we build something that has sustainability in a holistic fashion for the art, the artist, the audience, the ecosystem itself? And to me, that was the beginning of what NonDe was. Not so much a film movement, but perhaps a philosophy, or as Courtney Romero likes to say, it's a political movement.
I promise to ramble way worse than you, Ted.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, I should say, the only series I've seen every single episode of is V. That's one ever.
is the luckiest thing in the world to have been brought onto that show. Is when I was, because it was my favorite show on TV. When they were like, "Hey, you want to come in for an interview?" Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that call. And within a week, I was in the room. So I maybe have a different perspective on NonDe. Not entirely different, just from a different kind of like frame of reference, having worked in TV as opposed to cinema. I never really, my career started in features. I worked in production on a couple of feature films in New York. But pretty soon after that, went into the world of TV. And what NonDe means to me is maybe a little bit different than what it might mean to everyone else on the panel, because I feel like from the writing that I've read of all of us and where I think we all kind of stand, cinema is kind of the primary target, primary focus of this NonDe movement, and feature film specifically, and the kind of like episodic, serialized kind of series version of this behaves a lot differently than this kind of like one product that you kind of come together and make and then release. What I am focused on in this, I'm adopting the kind of principles of NonDe, in that I am not reliant on some outside big money funds that help me make these things, but instead I am kind of bootstrapping my way to getting to a sustainable model, right? And that's something you talk about a lot, Ted, is this idea of sustainability. And I think more than features, I would say sustainability for series is so important, because you kind of have to just sustain it indefinitely. You have to sustain the cost of production, you have to sustain the passion for writing season by season. And the idea that you have to create some sort of flywheel kind of emerged from reading what you've been writing, Ted. And what NonDe means to me is crystallizing that idea of sustainability, crystallizing that idea of like, oh, we got to bootstrap our way to getting this thing funded. And, there's a few people in this room who've worked on sets, Chris, Dave, Dallas, Eric. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone else who's worked on the set of this series that I'm working on. And it just takes the help of people around you. And the series that I'm making right now is super small in scope, but I'm hoping to expand it. I'm actually going out to brands to try and sell this thing as a sustainable model, not just for me, the creative, but for companies out there, for companies that might want to partner with someone who could get eyeballs on this thing, even posting independently on, YouTube and other platforms. And so what NonDe means to me is that kind of sustainable flywheel of, you make something that people want to watch, you get someone out there to help fund the next episode in this thing, or the next version of this thing. And then you get more eyeballs, and you just start spinning that flywheel as soon as possible so that you can then bootstrap to the next big thing. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take a long time. And we're going to start with getting the first brand that offered to give us anything was a Korean fried chicken restaurant that has really delicious fried chicken, and was like, okay, we'll give you, $250 worth of chicken for this thing. Unfortunately, they called me a week later, and a week after the shoot, when we needed the chicken. But that's not, yeah, we're still working our way through it. Most of it's
fried chicken in the freezer. It's not so bad.
It was our actor did complain quite a bit on the day when we actually found the chicken that had been sitting in the box just for an hour. So I can't imagine what a week we do. Anyway, yeah, pretty much exactly. Anyway, so that's kind of my vantage point on the NonDe ecosystem, and yeah, that's enough.
So I have worked at some pretty big places, and the biggest takeaway that I've learned from why are they the establishments that they are, I've always left away with like organization, right? These are like entities, right? They have teams, they have executives, they have they have coordinators, they have assistants, they have a system in how things flow, right? And the reason why they are a behemoth of machine is because they have the ability to amplify, whatever it is they want to do, right? That's why filmmakers want to go make a studio movie, because they know that the studio will have a big budget and they have a team behind that's going to get their movie made and hopefully more smoothly. And they have a marketing team and they can push it out to more people and they can get into theaters. And so, when I got onto Substack, the biggest thing that I was really drawn to this idea for NonDe is that, we don't, as independents, we don't have access to all those things, right? We don't have the all the bells and whistles that these big corporations have. So what do we have access to? We have access to our audience, and we have access to each other. And so what I like to think of NonDe as is, us figuring out ways to organize ourselves so that we don't necessarily need a big entity to help get our products off the ground, and to help find our audiences and to help, bootstrap the thing together. Like we can use each other. And so, it's different. It's a little bit different from just saying I'm independent, because when I hear independent, I hear I'm going to do this over here and you can do that thing over there. And we're not really in a lot of communication with each other. And so what I think we all want sort of NonDe to be a version of is, hey, John, like, I want to do this movie. I know you have an expertise in this. Can you help me out here? Right? Hey, Taylor, like, you're great at marketing. Can you help bounce some ideas off for branding? Right? I don't have that. Can we figure that out for our project? And the only way that I think that works is if we're all talking to each other. We all know what everyone does well, and we all know what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are. And when we're not talking, then we end up in the same problem that we had before. So the way I think of NonDe is like, it's somewhat of a version of being independent, where we can all like kind of go our separate ways when we want to. But when we feel compelled to need to work together, we can bring our resources and our expertise together to build something that hopefully can, be just as great to a regular audience member than the big budget studio things that come out. And so I guess that's my version of NonDe. Is that good enough for you, Ted?
To be clear, the question was, what is NonDe?
Yeah, like to you, because obviously there's so many different.
Okay, we'll keep this concise. About 5 years ago, I was going to make my first feature film. And I watched it. I was like, I wrote the film and I was like, yes, I'm ready. Let's go. And I was like, what does a producer do? Let me research that, figure out how to make it. And slowly unfolding, I realized like, oh, this system's awful. I'm going to be 200 before I make all the films I want to make and get to tell the stories that I want to tell. And so that sort of started me reimagining for myself, like, well, what does a system look like where you get to tell the stories you want to tell? And I love psychology. It is one of my favorite. I used to, in my school, read psychology textbooks. Like, I just love how the human brain works. And there was just this notion that, like, man, if you could just get a community of people that are working under the same vision, like that want what you want, which is to make the movies Hollywood's not making, to make the movies they're not showing. And so what does that look like? And then, yes, FilmStack, which is the film community on Substack, came in like a freaking answered prayer and was like, I want that too. You're not alone in wanting to take a career path in your own hands. Because I know we focus so much on one film, but I know we have so many stories and movies inside of us that the path forward has to be more collaborative, has to be more straightforward. And so to me, what NonDe represents, and I love naming things. And so when I saw Ted Red, I love names. Like titles, a good movie title, I'm like, I'm there. I don't even need to know the plot. And so when I saw Ted introduce this concept behind NonDe, I was like, a renaming of a movement. That's the start. Because people can get excited about what they don't know what it is yet. And we can figure out in the meantime what that path forward looks like. And so to me, NonDe is exactly what Ellis was saying about sharing resources. Franklin Leonard had this great quote in an interview a couple weeks ago, and he said, competitive markets tend to underinvest in infrastructure, innovation, and discovery. And so to me, NonDe, what the collaborative effort is building out in real time an infrastructure that allows you and equips you to tell the stories you want to tell. To not have to think, oh, if this film just gets picked up by a big streaming service, or oh man, if someone just gives me a chance, it's like, no, bet on yourself. You know the story's good. You know the story's worth telling because it's inside of you. Like, you want to tell it. And so it's creating the spaces and sharing the resources. And I look at it as just like an educational network and community that can figure things out in real time, that can empower and champion one another. Because I think Hollywood focuses on exclusivity and sort of like celebrity culture. That's great for them. But like, I don't have any desire for people to know my name. I don't have any desire. I just want to make movies. I just want to make movies. I want to be on set. I want to figure out cinematic images that juxtapose together and move you to an emotional experience. I want to make the kind of movies that I fell in love with, that transformed me and shaped my world as a kid. And I think, to me, NonDe is giving us that ability. And it's not like all the answers are before us and we have an infrastructure. It's literally like you're laying the brick and then someone else lays the brick next to you. And we're just like continually building and pivoting and sharing and educating. And it's, I have high hopes for it, to say the least. But yes, that is what I do.
I just want to point out that Taylor has had the designs for the first shirt line of NonDe, I think, a day and a half. It's that long after the terms first dropped. And you didn't use your phrase, a think tank.
Oh, yes. But it is, most certainly. Join the think tank.
I think I should have eaten some protein before I came. I don't have a huge answer to that question. I will bow to you all takes on it. My whole thing is a big part of the NonDe movement, from what I've gathered at being part of FilmStag, is that it's about the need, to not depend on the Hollywood studio system and big financing and stuff like that. So it totally is in alignment with what I always say, which is make stuff yourself, just do it. Do not wait for someone to pick you. All those things that you always hear. But what I'm hearing a lot on FilmStag is that you need to build community. And I do agree that's very important, because if you finish your film, you won't have a lot to do with it if you don't have community. You will find that out soon enough, especially by your third film, like I have. But because anyways, there's a lot I can say there. But if you cannot build community, if you think that you are not, there are people who are cut out to make films, but they're not necessarily cut out to be community leaders or to post content that goes viral or that gets them a big following. And so if you're not both, I would take heart. You don't have to really be both. The most important thing is to make a movie. You do not want to be talking about making a movie 6 years from now. You want to just do it as soon as possible. And so I hope if you take away nothing else from me, from my participation, perhaps lame so far on this panel, is that you do make something and don't keep talking about it. Don't keep crying about it at night in your room or whatever. Like, just do it. Okay. No, that was great. And this panel was designed because every person here brings a different something towards the movement. And I think that the differences between everyone is a good example of how all encompassing this movement is and what you can do within it. And everyone is talking about sustainability and everything. And I bet you, like, everyone out there as filmmakers are wondering, like, what does that look like and how can we actually do it? Like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, you know, and I know a lot of that is with audience building, and I know there's been tons of great ideas on like things you could do for that. So I guess the next question is like, what are some practical things filmmakers can start doing today to create the sustainable life that NonDe is talking about?
I would second Courtney's statement of just start doing stuff. And the easiest way to start doing stuff, the way that I put it is like when I first started like posting stuff on like Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, little short like sketch stuff, vertical, whatever. My goal was to just embarrass myself as soon as possible and just get out anything bad. Get out all the bad stuff first, right? And it's enormously freeing. It's enormously freeing to have a bunch of bad shit online. It's enormously freeing to have like sketches that don't land and characters that are poorly developed and stories that don't go anywhere. And it's a minute and a half too long. And it's like, what was the cinematography? What are you even doing? It is liberating like nothing else to have this stuff out in the world. And so that I'm not comparing myself to the people who are, you know, Jimmy Donaldson on YouTube or like Martin Scorsese in the traditional filmmaking, right? I'm comparing myself to this shitty video that I made 3 months ago that got like 112 views, right? And I think the way to start working your way towards a digital series, I mean, the stuff that I'm making is like between 8 and 11 minutes long per episode. The way to start working your way towards that, or even a feature film, is to start making short form content and putting it out in the world to get over that initial hurdle of embarrassment and fear and shame that I think we're all kind of like trained to absorb because we feel like we have to be perfect and we compare ourselves to other people. So I forget the original question, but yeah, you start by just like embarrassing yourself as soon as possible. That would be my advice. Just get yourself out there, get over the hump of fear, and just start making things. Because once you do that, it's the next step. You make a longer thing, or you write a longer script, or you tell a deeper story, and just work your way out. Embarrass yourself. I made it. If you want to be a filmmaker, a creative, a writer, a director, just start putting stuff out there. Start making it, no matter how bad you think it is.
I'll go. Read Ted Hope's Substack.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, he has a list of 200 plus film financiers, how to be a producer, his An Invisible Nation distribution plan is incredible. And it's happening in real time. Big fan of things happening in real time, if you can't tell. Because there are no right answers. You can fail. Like you said, you figure it out. It's not a detriment to your character if something doesn't land. It's literally just like, that didn't work. And I think reading Ted Hope's and Substack is a form of self-education. And the more educated you are about how you can do things yourself, how you can create opportunities and connect with film crews and sort of tell stories, what cinema is, cinematic education. Education is a huge thing for me. I think it's so empowering. And also, to John's point, I would say invite your audience in right now while you're making that stuff. Just be like, hey guys, I am trying to figure this out. What do you think of this terrible skit? To John's point. But yeah, I say too. Okay. Comedy was not my thing, John. You know this about me. Yes, sorry. This could have been better. Sketch. And I think inviting your audience and be willing to embarrass yourself in front of people. And not in like a pageantry sort of fool's gesture type way, but like in a way that filmmaking is a process. John and I were literally just talking before this, how cinema seems to be the only art form where you can't really have a process of failure. Like, you're not allowed to show the scenes and and you making that stuff. It's your debut has to hit. It has to be a masterpiece, or like you're irrelevant. Like, you don't get a second chance. People don't think you're capable. And I think viewing it more as an art form where you're just in the process and you're learning in real time and you're live conversing with your audience of being like, hey, what did you guys think? Just whatever's comfortable with you. But I really do think treating it like it's a process and that you're allowed to fail, and also inviting just people in, because I promise you there are people online, as vast as the internet is, that will resonate with what you're doing in real time.
That was great. The thing I'll say to be helpful is be authentic. I think that what I don't want people to walk away with is thinking that you have to turn yourself into a social media influencer, right? Like, I think that, you don't have to go and like, now I got to start making TikToks, about, hey, come watch my movie, right? I think part of that is valuable, but we mentioned this one time, I think that two things can be true. You can understand that we live in this digital age where, you need to engage with people, on the internet, while also being true that we want to do things like this, and how do you sort of like bridge that gap? I use the two big examples I like to use in like really on like a studio level. Ryan Coogler, he is a wonderful filmmaker. He does not have any social media, right? And yet he understood that he needed to get out there and promote his movie in a digital way, i.e. going on podcasts and videos, making little TikToks with other influencers, right? Like, Ryan Coogler understood, like, okay, I have to promote my movie in a different way if I want people to know, who I am. And it was really cool. They did an episode of Abbott Elementary recently, and they referenced Ryan Coogler as a filmmaker, right? That's because he made a brand of himself, right? And he didn't have any social media to do it. And Ryan Coogler going to make TikToks, right? The other example I like to use is James Gunn. James Gunn runs a whole freaking studio, and he directly engages with fans on Twitter, right? Like, they'll ask a question and he'll just be like, I'm here, right? And so I think that for any person, and I can speak for myself, I learned I'm not an influencer. I don't have any desire to be an influencer. That's not really my bag. I like to write. So, I think that's why Substack works really well for me personally. But I also really love branding. Like, that's one thing me and Taylor really talked about a lot. How can you create a really cool brand that you can associate yourself with, you be a part of, and then use the things that you read on, whether it's Substack or you watch videos on it, and use some type of prowess to push that brand forward. So anyway, that's my version of it, right? But everyone can have their version of it, right? And so I think that is sort of like the biggest thing is, don't feel you have to do something that's not true to you, while also understanding like, hey, what do I need and where do I need to go? What do I need to put energy towards to bridge that gap between, building the audience in the way that's the most authentic to yourself.
Yeah, obviously, because a lot of times, like, building an audience in that way, it feels very cringy, and like you're just trying to sell them something, like everyone else is trying to sell them, but you're trying to sell them yourself. So I think that a lot of NonDe is really great because people have a lot of ideas about how to build your audience, but involve them in the process rather than just the product of it.
I do it. Wait, go ahead.
What did we say? Are we talking?
Well, we were talking about what them can do and how to get their audience started, how to get to it.
Because it seems like everyone's answers are so different.
Yeah.
I guess it's just your shtick, like what your thing is. My shtick is that you don't need a crew to make a movie. My third movie that I just released pretty recently, it's called It's Not You, It's LA. It was originally called This Fucking Town, so you might see it under that title. But I shot the first 14 minutes with a DP and a sound guy, and then I could not go further just financially, unless I learned how to do everything myself. So I bought a camera and some lights and lavalier microphones and Adobe Premiere Pro subscription. And I learned how to do everything myself. I literally cannot set the time on a watch. I wrote that in my book. I don't know if it's ADHD or what, but when you really, really want to do something, you learn how, right? So I learned how to use my camera, learned how to use the lights. No DP would agree that I've learned to use the light. But it was enough. Okay. Just so you could see the actor's eyes in the shot or whatever. Like, and I learned how to put the lavalier microphones on people, stuff like that. And within 3 months, I was shooting more scenes for what became a movie. It was going to be a web series. I decided it could be a movie if I just shoved all these scenes together. And I just would write 30 pages at a time, call on my actor friends, get the machinery up and going again, go to their apartments, cars, parks, wherever we were stealing shots, and just kept shooting. And so now it's an 87-minute movie that I basically made myself. So I would urge you to think outside the Hollywood paradigm, which is that you have to have a proper shoot, you have to have a crew, you have to work miserably long days, never see your spouse, don't walk your dogs. Like, I hate all of that. I'm 57 years old. I do not want to live like that, unless someone is giving me a lot of money to have department heads. And I once read that the Coen brothers go out to eat, like on a night of one of their shoots. And I was like, that's fascinating to me. Like, just to be able to, oh, honey, let's go get dinner after a day of shooting your movie like that. I love that. What I expect that to happen one day. I really want it to happen, but I'm just saying, do not let not having the money for a crew, stop you from making something. You literally can make a movie by yourself with your actor friends if you really, really want to.
I think I have to tell a Coen Brothers story, which like two steps to it, where, that I had just, I had the privilege of being involved in almost 150 movies, and my last experience was absolutely my worst experience. We were shooting in Albuquerque, though, and Joel, Ethan, I believe, they just shot a movie there, and we ate at restaurants a lot. And when I ordered the fish, they were like, Ethan will order that every day for a week when he would come here. We didn't know how he would come. He would come here while shooting. He always showed up at the restaurant. So it's true. And it was a nice closer for me because when I moved to New York City, New York didn't yet have 24-hour green grocers on every corner. And my fellow film student roommates and I had a certain practice that, like, when 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. came around, we were desperate to get either Lucky Charms or catch Punch with Punch Fairies. We had to find a way to get at the cereal. And we had to walk 11 blocks. And every time we'd get to that 24-hour store, there were these stoners having the same question. Captain Crunch or Captain Crunch with Crunch Bears. Saw them all the time. So I was a little surprised when I finally bought my first ticket to the New York Film Festival. I had the cheap seats, second row. I went to see a blood-drenched James Kane Southern Gothic novel. Afterward, film turned into a film. That's how we described it. And afterwards, they brought the filmmakers on, the director, the producer, the star. And they were the stoners from the Green Grocer who made Blood Simple. It was so helpful to me because, like, literally, like, that next week, I bought Blood Simple and I didn't buy Stranger in Paradise tickets because that was opening the next week at Cinema Studio, I think it was called. And when I went to see it, I got accosted by a young man who was like handing out flyers for his movie. I sat down in the movie theater, watched Stranger in Paradise, and they showed the trailer, filmed out in front of the movie theater for the next film, where that same guy that handed me a flyer was selling socks. Spike Lee. And then that week when I took the subway downtown, and I got off at Washington Square. The train doors opened, and there was this guy with a big silver pompadour in front of me, Jim Jarmusch. You know, the fact that I could see these guys walk the same streets, did the same thing, rode the same subways, went to the same movie theater as me, made me feel like, when I later say to Hal Hartley, like, we spent 3 years trying to get somebody to finance our movie. We have to stop. And he said, I stopped. I just got a loan from Citibank, and I'm making my first film. And that first film, this answers the question, like what was a movie called The Unbelievable Truth, a film that cost us $55,000 to get into the can. We sold to a brand new distributor we didn't trust. His name was Harvey Weinstein for $250,000. The film ended up costing about $170,000. We were able to distribute the profits from that movie to the cast and crew. Everyone got a full union wage. Nobody had a contract. The checks arrived on December 23rd. Nobody was expecting it. The best gift you can ever get is the one you don't expect. So when I called on January 7th and said, Hal's got a new script, I don't think we'll have financing until March 15th, but we're only going to shoot in this one new development if it can get out by March 25th. So could you come and work on it again? Everybody came. So like, you're trying to figure out what to do, you know. And I should add, by the way, 22 people. Nobody on that crew was rich. Everybody was working class. 22 people from that cast and crew went on to direct feature films, including our wardrobe supervisor named Kelly Reichardt. You know, the people that did direct, Judy Chin has won 2 Oscars for makeup. Ann New York has produced Alejandro Gonzalez's Rocky. Like, everybody got something done. Yes, one of the directors did Surf Nazis Must Die, but, you know, different strokes for different folks. The things that when I start thinking about what should you do, you need to determine and recognize that for most people, the system that you're in is also in you, and it will dictate what you think you have to do. And there are reasons why that is, you know, why we moved to a total transactional society, right? Why the agencies makes only want what they can sell and what that might do to your choices and your career. You do not have to make a movie for the existing system, but you have to then do the work to make sure it gets out there. So I would say that you want to get off of a one film at a time, build it, and they will come mentality. You know, I looked at it often as a way to look at the difference between studio and non-dependent. Studio is a product and non-dependent is a process, right? How do you plan for the long term? And one of the things that brought us all together, you know, what was a newsletter was a mail list program that masquerades as a newsletter service, right? That you're able to start to gather people's emails address, which is the most powerful currency that you have as an artist who is also an entrepreneur. So what can you do to build that mail list, right? You know, like I've been on Substack now for almost 3 years, I think, right? And today I crossed over to 19,000 subscribers. It's interesting to watch. That was 5,000 year 1, 6,000 more year 2, and that would make 8,000. And hopefully I get to 20,000, not get it. So the 9,000 of the year 3 in the bills. And but that's only one tool we have to build our mail list. Like, what are the other tools that you know, we have that can do that? Because that helps you step out of the system. And one of the things that I think is helpful in recognizing those systems is that's a practice that you want to embrace. I encourage you to embrace as almost an annual ritual. What defines this time we're living in? What this time defines the industry that we're in? And where is the change coming? And like right now, you have a huge message because the entire industry is asleep at the wheel once again. Like, one of the things that, like, how do you stay motivated when things are so tough in the world and start to go down? I found time and time again, you can expect the most powerful people, the wealthiest people, the smartest people to make totally dumbass decisions. It's like clockwork. It happens all the time, right? And that's happening right now because what we've seen happen elsewhere in all the other cultural industries is finally happening now in film. And that's understandable because film is the most capital intensive, unless you listen to Corday to follow suit, right? It's been that way for most people, too capital intensive. So people weren't self-reliant. They had to depend on others. And so they trench ways, practice, stay that way. But it's changing, right? And that is the disintermediation of all cultural industries, right? That the people who are the mediators, the middle people, our reliance on them has diminished. We've seen it in music, we've seen it in publishing. And I would say they're like 4.5 horsemen who are leading the charge in cinema, and you can start to see that, right? That is the creator economy, that the YouTube folks who made it clear that you don't need to rely on that system. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't give you ownership of the email addresses, right? But they definitely stepped away to show that can happen. You have the documentary filmmakers who was shut out by RLC's reliance on Wall Street, who basically said you can no longer make work that speaks truth to power, that pushes against the corporate state. Yes, there are plenty of examples. There's the very Weiss right wing, whatever that's called, published a survey of how many of the major media companies kowtowed to the Trump regime administration. And it basically said that of all the major ones, every single one did, except for Netflix and Bloomberg, right? So 48 of 50 major companies basically acquiesced to the demands of our present government. And Netflix did it, right? They did things that were distinct, and refused to do that. But I can tell you, as someone who made a film that was a producer on a film that kind of spoke the truth of the Chinese authoritarian state, that we were told directly by Disney, by Apple, that they would never do anything that talks back to China because they rely on it too much. Our economy is entwined. All of the systems that focus on the work that artists do, right, are meant to serve the stockholders. They're all involved with so many business. It doesn't care about an artist at all, right? And so it's why ripple? But why create any ripples along the way? When I was at Amazon in those early days, they did let me acquire some stuff that was a little prickly. They allowed me to make a few things that were a little prickly. But as I went on, I could see that was going away, and it went away, and it's gone, right? So the question now that we start to see is, how do you make work? Whether you're living in one of those countries, whether our country goes in that direction, whether you just want to do a subject that is no longer popular, how do you start to do that? And we're moving now, I got off my 4.5 horseman trap, but we're moving now to a direction that starts to show that there is a path, right? And just to finish that 4.5 horseman, that was the creator economy, that was the documentary filmmakers. That's what got me off the track. That is the outliers, that folks like Louis C.K., we had a big conversation about him in the car. But Louis C.K., before he did things behind bushes and no one should do in the public, did create some very interesting shows that he financed on his own and sold on his own. People like Robert Wright, who's built a huge following, a Substack of over 1 million people, and made a movie, that called The Last Class that performed really well in terms of the documentary. The Outliers have done that. And then you have this upstart, most successful studio startup, I think, in the history of the world. She's named Taylor Swift. Who also has focused on building a mailing list, as many musicians have long before, and could step outside of the studio system, right? And I say 4.5 because I think you should also put Angel Studios on it. They've made a mistake going after public funds now, perhaps, but they recognize that there was something called the church that brought people together. There's something that, along other lines that brought people together, and those people were not being served, and that audience needed to be addressed. There are many such audiences. Maybe they lack the community organizing principle of a church, but there are many things that bring people together, right? And I think that moves us to distribution as a service. But as opposed, there are like 20, and I have this as in an upcoming post. There are like 20 distribution as a service companies that are out there. But there's a big difference between that and what NonDe is, and what you, if you're looking to move in this direction, can accomplish. That all of those companies still exist purely in a transactional mode, right? To make money. One of them is actually who Taylor, I think she lets me follow that. Not this one, the other one. Worked with both the Restore and the follow-up Sugar. But the difference, I think, in this next era in the disintermediation, distribution as a service realm is that the focus will be on community building, right? It's about, how we take what we once thought of as customers and recognizing we're moving them to audience, but the goal is to bring them to community. Our movie that we've been releasing over the last 2 years only got better by learning how to collaborate with our audience, Our audience made it better. It made the release better, and it's brought through a separate thing that's happening now for us. Documentary film historically has had to rely on stage finance, right? We all want to get money for our movies up front, right? But documentaries frequently you have to keep raising in bits and pieces. It's really tough, but it has some benefits. Documentary film has gender proportional representation in the directing ranks in America, right? We have less than 4% women directing features. It got worse since Me Too, along the way. The America corporate studio system is controlled by old white straight men, right? And everything else gets shut out, right? So you start to see why you want to work outside of the system. But that process of stage financing, I think, is a process that you want to embrace, not just for the production of your film, but also for the release of your film and your ongoing career. We are always in fundraising mode, right? Which means we always need a new project. We always need a new goal. And as we explain what this goal is, I'm thinking about 2 more goals down the field, right? So it's constantly like I write about this on my film, on my Substack. I believe there are 3 phases of distribution. Each of them have different components on it. And each step, like it's a big part of my day, is raising money for the next steps, right? And right now, I'm just like you. I give some advice. This is the only advice. Own your audience. Read distinct Discord needs. Do what you have. But also, the thing that it really has been an aha moment for me is this kind of recognition of the ongoing fundraising process and how you bring that in, not as a separate piece, but as a part all the time.
I would.
And just on it, just because you mentioned James Gunn, Ellis, I did bring some gifts to folks. If anyone still has physical DVDs, because I think that is key thing to keep is physical media. But I once was on Twitter and I saw a guy named James Gunn, right? That he was getting something going that was always a dream of mine. I wanted to make a real life taxi driver, but in Lycra. And I wrote to him and his actor, Rainn Wilson, and we got to make a movie called Super. So I was going to give everything to folks that showed. That's for you if you still have it. But who has DVD players still? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many? Quick. I think I got most of you. I'm going to do this. You can only walk up. I'm going to just put them down. You can only walk up and grab the one you first walked to. You can't get the trade later. Yeah. So,
One more thing to add, and then I'll be really quick. I'm going to give you your second half horseman, which is Taylor Sheridan, who has created a ranch / movie studio / coffee brand, and has basically gotten enormous ownership over this property called Yellowstone, among other things that I think would be the nice counterpart towards Aegis Studios. Anyway, that's
Great. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really wanted to open it up with questions, but we had such little time. Okay, we'll do a couple of questions, but also I think you all need to go on Substack right away and start at an account and really just start reading what all these writers have to say and really just what's going on there. It's such an amazing vibe of everyone working together and sharing stories. A lot of you already know. So really everyone just get on it. And we have like 2 questions.
Did you use my link that I sent you on how the VR? That gives you, I think, a 3 paid subscription for month. Yeah, not 3.
Does anyone have a question?
But if you need more money, if you can't afford the paid one and you need it said, it just writes me out. Then you have to write it. Oh, come on. You don't get a DVD unless you have a question. And you can walk in and grab them anytime.
Roy Price suggested that a good idea for production in the near future for indie film or non-indie film. I'm not sure what he was describing. Was talking about putting together a business that would produce $2 million production films. And that would be the best way to right now. You suggest that we're getting a business for ourselves going. I'm wondering what your reaction is to that.
And by the way,
Which one's that?
Word Price was my boss at Amazon. He writes a great Substack called Price Point, and he gets very much into the depth of the business. $2 million makes a lot of sense because he basically can, depending on how you shoot somewhere between 5 and 25 days for that amount of money, and you can get some production value. But I think that most of that's the one you get. It's a great it's opening night at Sunday. But I think one of the key to building a career or building a business, right, it is maintaining a regular cadence. You have to try to find a way to produce work on a regular basis, because one of the strengths as artists or entrepreneurs we have is the fear the powerful have that the thing that you just made, the next one's going to be even better, right? So when they buy your film, they're not just buying the film, they're trying to buy a relationship. And so to get more leverage, you need to have a regular cadence. And obviously $2 million is easier to raise than $100 million. And if someone could raise $20 million, you can make 10 films, and that should sustain you over the course of 2.5 years. Because right now, even though it's fully capable, this is one of those things like on Substack, you pretty much get paid the next day, right? And if you're earning money on Substack, you can see it in real time. You get transfers in real time. And real-time payments and accounting is possible in everything. But for some reason, the film business, it takes 2.5 years to get paid when it happens, right? And I think I actually put this up on Substack today. I was just getting really angry about like how long it's taking to get paid from the theaters that we screened at a year ago. There's a lot of merit in it, but like the truth is in America, if you're making movies for $2 million, you're committing a crime. You are not working for a union. You're not being able to make a union film. You are encouraging people to work below their actual value. They probably are going to be working for less than minimum wage. And, they're not going to house what I think are the undeniable rights that people should have: healthcare, education, all of these things as a result. America is still the freest place we have to exploit one another in the world, so it does give birth to a lot of daring work.
Sam, can I ask you? I want to ask you in terms of you're not paying people well enough. You're paying them under minimum wage, nothing close to a living wage. What is your feeling on, I guess, back end, some equity stake in the movie, saying like, look, we're all in this together. Like, cause this is something that I'm doing with people that I'm working with, saying like, hey, if you're not working for money, I plan to give you, this accounts for everyone here, a piece of who has worked in this stuff that not every year. Let's be 100% clear. These 4 people who have worked on the things that I'm making, like, I want to, in success, reward you for what you've done. And there's obviously no guarantee, right? There's never a guarantee. What are your thoughts on that kind of model, giving people equity?
If I was building a company today, I would want to build fully a company that was truly worker-owned and shared in the spoils, as it were. I think we need a artist bill of rights in America, if not the world. And I think that we should not be able to give up, just like we can't sell ourselves into indentured servitude. We shouldn't be able to give up the future earnings or the future the value that our work creates. It should stay with us along the way. I'm really impressed by the guys that did Sing Sing and Jockey. Their new movie, Train Dreams, isn't done under that model, but I actually think the deep humanist vibe that you feel in that film is a carryover from the experiences that they've had. I've been able to speak to them, and I think that working in that fashion really taught them a lot. I found, the once was a time, being the old guy that I am, the once was a time where the unions in New York had a specific low budget contract where you got a much better wage, provided the producers had to give up 50% of their ownership stake to the crew. And we did that on numerous films, and we paid out on them. They were only 3 of our films paid out, and only 5 films in the history from there that's just ever paid out. So most people were pros, right? But I found that goodwill that generated along the way carried over, right? How do you get to be prolific? You treat people well. You be kind. You be human. You try to help them. You try to pay it forward. You collect knowledge and share knowledge. You being transparent. That will give you a long career that will help. So I think that's a great solution and suggestion.
And the list he was just saying is actually part of the NonDe manifesto, which you can find in Jet's Substack. But I think we're out of time now. Sorry, guys. We have another panel up. And thank you so much.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.